I'm just going to turn off my mic while I have a drink.
Hello, good evening, and a warm welcome to you. Welcome back to World Online Racing. I'm Frostbreath, and I'm once again joined by Epic tonight here for PC Tier 3 round number 2. After a interesting round last week on the Circuit of the Americas, we now move on to an entirely different type of track. It's Singapore, one of the tightest circuits there, with the walls very close to the track indeed. And let's see how the drivers are standing at the moment. Leroy Brown, of course, leading the standings after a brilliant race. Pretty dominant as well, I have to say, in Texas last week. Winning that race quite easily. Bogdan in second, then Lighty as a reserve driver in third. I believe he is present tonight. I'm trying to figure out which reserve drivers are racing tonight. I can't see him yet, so that might hurt his championship hopes a little bit. But Epic, Singapore, what can we expect here tonight?
Very little. No, I'm kidding. It's going to be incredibly interesting. It is probably my favorite track, really, on the entire 10 race calendar. Not only this calendar, but the whole 25 races, the 25 or 26 tracks we have available in this year's game. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Of course, we saw, as you said, some interesting racing last week. Of course, we saw a driver actually pick up I believe it was a race ban for this week, who was Antoine, or also known as French. He picked up a race ban, first driver to do it, and he is a full-time. He's in McLaren, so McLaren not having a great time again this season.
Yeah, I just found out that Lighty's actually in a McLaren, so he's there tonight.
Okay, yeah. Hopefully he can score some big points like he did last time round. I mean, reserve, P3, podium to start off the season. Last season, we spent the whole season saying he's brilliant in qualifying, yet he seems to struggle in the races, and he actually turned it around. This could be a really good start for him, but none of us can deny the amazing drive Leroy Brown had last time out. And I really think, I said to you then, he really might be a threat going into the rest of the season, because he is one hell of a consistent driver.
Yeah, of course. Not to forget, Conrad Boehm had a good fight with him until the incident with the McLaren happened. Then he actually finished in P10, according to the standings right there. So let's see if he can come back a little bit tonight and fight for the win with Leroy once again. But then again, as this is a very different sort of track, we might also see a very different kind of driver coming out in front. We never know, because it's still early in the season. Many names we have to see what they can do in this tier. I believe we're about to get underway, aren't we?
Yes, we are. In the next few moments, we should be getting underway in the next few moments. We hope and pray. But yeah, one driver I do have to point out right now who put in one hell of a stellar performance. Even though he didn't finish the highest up, it was Tom 97. So he was down in, I believe, 17th.
Yes.
At his lowest, or 19th, sorry, which was, I think, the lowest position he was after lap 2 or 3. And he pulled his way back up into P8. An incredibly solid drive, one of the best drives personally I have ever seen. And that's a drive that, we haven't seen a while from him in WOR, but it is one hell of a recovery. And if he can get his qualifying really good today, and he can really get high up that grid, if he could get a top five, I really could see him getting a podium if he has that same strength as he did last race.
Yeah, there were so many incidents he managed to avoid, thankfully, except for the one at the start of the race, of course, which caused him to drop down.
Which was his own.
We also mentioned last week that many drivers were struggling with qualifying. A lot of mistakes here and there. Cars that were looking quite unstable. Of course, now with a high downforce type track, a different type of setup as well. So let's see how the drivers are going to manage this track. In terms of track limits, I think it's not as easy to get penalties here as it is in Texas, but it's still a tricky one to get correct, right?
Yeah, I do agree with you there, but it's not, of course we have the exit of turn 1 and through turn 2, difficult for track limits. We have a few little sections. We have the small section before the bridge. We have, before the hairpin, sorry. We've got all of these little sections that can be a bit tricky if you're trying to, of course, maximize your lap, get everything you can out of it. But I will say, it isn't as easy to get a penalty, which of course a lot of drivers will be thankful for, but it is much easier to hit a wall and crash.
Definitely, yes.
And one of those corners, of course, is one of those small sections, this just before the hairpin and actually heading up to the hairpin, you can very easily tap the wall, get wing damage. You can really do a lot to your car through a lot of the sections around Singapore. Of course, the old layout used to have the little weaving bit in the final sector, which of course caught a lot of drivers out. Sadly, that was gone. It was my favourite section. Sadly, on the whole
yeah,
track,
the bit
that
with the
was
tunnel, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was my favourite section, but they got rid of it, which does make the track a little bit easier. But still, there are areas on the track where you have to be very careful, even including the final corner, which, if you take a little bit wider than you can, that's absolutely possible. You can actually spin it, and that's of course what nobody wants to be having. And of course, it lands you in the wall, like of course we saw one driver do it a few years ago, and that was Lance Stroll, who I believe that was last year, who put it in the wall at the end of qualifying. And I don't think any of these drivers will be hoping for that here tonight.
No, this is still one of the toughest tracks on the entire calendar. Not only because the track is incredibly tight with the walls and such, but also because, lap times are long. There's quite a few laps, despite the lap times being quite high up there. So it's going to be a tough one, even in 50%, especially when there's multiple safety cars going to be coming out. And I would be surprised if that happens tonight as well. Look at the track map. Everybody is out already. Everybody's very eager to go. The first one to get underway as he goes through the final two corners is, of course, Lucas Beisner, who also spun in the early stages of the race, but didn't manage to recover as well as Tom did. So let's see if he can manage to get it back on track tonight properly. He's a quick qualifier. He's quite good at it. And let's see if he can have a proper shot at the title this season. We've called him Mr. Consistent in the last season, and that's because he was Mr. Consistent, finishing in the top 10, always around the same positions, in the top 5-ish, top 10-ish, P5, P10 more or less, around there. Didn't really get a podium as he goes a little bit wide, but thankfully the game allows that to continue on. Nearly gotten the track limit disqualification right there, but he just lost a little bit too much time there for the game to say, no, that lap shouldn't count at all. Through the middle sector he goes then. One of the other tricky parts coming up right here. You have to be very careful on the throttle, otherwise you're in the wall already. The track itself gets even tighter around this part, especially as he moves on through turn 13. A very fitting name for such a corner. Already we have our first crash. That's Mark Schluter out of the qualifying already, and trying to get a view of what happened to him there. There's a yellow flag going on.
George Russell corner, as I like to call it.
Yeah, well, unfortunately already disappeared, but yeah, that's an unlucky start for a man who is actually quite rapid in many seasons I've seen him racing so far. He's very
fast, but so far, this game, he has seemed to struggle. We Tier 2 last season, Mark just did not have the best of seasons. Of course, he is one of Fritz's Tier 3's best drivers, as Boba is the first one to actually set a lap.
Yeah,
quite a few drivers unhappy with their lap. And Julian follows that with 25.6. Not bad to start off their session. Nobody so far getting close. Matex quite far off, same as Tim Tonimo, who had a little bit of a rough qualifying session, as Leroy Brown goes and pushes that even further. 1 minute 25.5, taking another exactly 0.120 out of Julian, which is quite a bit extra, especially for a first lap. But a few drivers not getting around so easy. A few drivers are struggling, as Louis Welch goes slightly faster. Still not below the 25.5s, but I can definitely see it coming. But I think everybody's had rather scruffy laps. We saw it from Lucas Bayes and we saw it from Lighty. We've seen it from quite a few drivers. Yeah, a lot of drivers. Mark Schluter, especially Mark Schluter.
He's had the worst, unfortunately.
Yeah, he has had the worst.
That's a shame.
But yeah, quite a few drivers having a bit of a rough lap. Ivan Santamaria as well, sitting in that group, 14th and last of the drivers who have set a lap so far. Just on a quick note with Ivan Santamaria, his qualifying last season, he averaged at 4.6 as his average qualifying, which is incredibly strong across the season. Now, he didn't, of course, race fully. He did miss quite a few races, but he was, he was incredibly strong. But so far, he hasn't qualified inside of the top 10, I believe, so far. I'm trying to find where he qualified last week. But yeah, his qualifying definitely hasn't been as strong. We're seeing it here. He seems to be a bit more for the pace, isn't he? He's not exactly there.
He is definitely the man who can cut through the field very easily, but let's see and hope he can actually improve his qualifying as well. Currently sitting 14th and last indeed, about 7/10 of a second behind Louis Welch, which on this track is actually not that far away, if I'm honest. You can gain a lot of lose a lot of time here in Singapore, so I will just put it down to a mistake for now. It really depends on how he goes through the second and potentially third attempt. 5 drivers that weren't able to set a lap are currently out on their second attempt already, quite early with 12 minutes remaining, meaning they will have to wait a little bit longer to get going on the final run where the track is potentially at its best. Bogdan Moldovan is the first driver to get his lap started. He finished last race in second in Texas, so let's see if he can get that ball rolling once more as he goes through turn 1, already negotiating a pretty tricky bit right here. Turns 2 and 3 right away, then turn 4 up here, staying with the lines, but the car is not that happy with coming out of the corner. He nearly lost it with a lot of oversteer. And then let's see how it works here. It looks a lot better through the corner right there, turn 5. And then storming towards the end of the first sector. First sector lap time is going to be 25.903, not too bad at all. Then go towards turn 7, 8 and 9, and another bit of straight coming up right there. Let's follow him in the car. Let's see which gears he's using through these corners. Back down to gear 3, and what was a very quick gear switch right there. Immediately going back up to gear number 4. Then gear 6 right there, and then turns 11, 12, 13 once again is going to be a tricky one to get by, but it looks like the car is a lot more stable at this part of the track. Oh, I believe there was a tiny hit on the wall right there on the right side in the front, but no damage appears to have been done to the Haas just yet. End of sector 2 then, 1 minute 1.882. Looking quite decent so far. Stay within the white lines. Quite important to get it right here. If you mess up 2 attempts, it's going to be big pressure by the end of the session. But it looks like he's keeping it all alive so far. 4 more corners to go. And then one of the easiest corners to invalidate your lap, of course, is this one. Especially turn 18 and 19 as well. To mess it up right here. But he does it. It looks like it's going to be a stable lap time of a 25.9.
Not bad, on the same level as his teammates, actually. Very close, 6,000ths off.
Yep.
I just double-checked. Ivan Santamé qualified 10th last race, so as it stands, he'll have an average qualifying 14th, where he sits at the moment, so he'll be hoping for a lot more. We've got Conrad, who's on a lap at the moment. He's about to finish his lap in, of course, the Red Bull, using everything he's got, using the last of his DRS. Some drivers, by the way, I have realized are using overtake during that. But Conrad, 25.289, that's what I was talking about. Can you see the little green light on his steering wheel? That's to show he's deploying the ERS. Yep. And he's using overtake. And so
the only way to do it as well.
Yeah, this is what I've realized. With lap time, some drivers, for like Conrad has just done, it isn't a big lap time because he's used a lot of overtake. A lot of other drivers, for instance, Louis Welch, I watched his entire lap, and I'm watching him again. He's not using any overtake. He's using a bit, for instance, he just hit the wall very slightly. He just scraped the wall, then he used some, but he's not using it in general. So I think we could be seeing a bit of a sort of discrepancy in the amount of ERS everybody's using during their lap and what sort of ERS modes they are using as well.
Yeah, I'm watching Tim. He's also doing it, but only when he comes out of the corner. A tiny bit right now, and then turns it off straight away to make sure he's got plenty of battery left for the next upcoming bits. He's already 1.5 tenths up, so he's doing quite well, but it will still not nearly get him close to a provisional pole here, the man in the kick saddle right there. So let's see where else he can deploy some extra battery. Only it's got a little bit remaining, and he's going to use quite a bit, getting up to the throttle, using the overtake once again. And that will mean his battery light will start flashing at the main straight, which he crosses the line right now on, and that's P11, 25.8, just behind his teammate.
Very difficult, but you see what I mean by this is going to make it very difficult for drivers to tell.
Yeah, look at Tom.
And sort of, yeah.
He just flew up to P5.
Yeah, I was looking for him because I saw him in 14th. Now he's P5, very strong lap there. But you see what I mean though, that this is going to make it really difficult. Exafox as well going P2, very strong lap. Now Leroy Brown, even faster.
But look
he's
at that.
Right on the back.
Yep, but it's Conrad. He's back. He's back.
I've just seen his ERS, by the way. His ERS was higher than Conrad's was when he crossed the line.
Interesting.
And so Leroy Brown isn't using as much ERS. This is again possibly where the time difference is coming in. And why, for instance, we're seeing a bit more of an unpredictable qualifying and how we're seeing some drivers moved down the order very quickly, like we did last race, didn't we? We saw quite a few drivers drop through the order very quickly in the first 3-4 laps of the race. They're going from, for instance, 5th, 6th, 7th, already outside of the points.
Yeah, just I want to show as an example, Louis Welch was fast enough for provisional pole with 25.5 right now. That is nearly 3/10 behind what is now provisional pole, so that just shows how quick it changes indeed.
Very much. We saw in the race, you can't use overtake throughout, every single lap of the race. You can't do it like you can in qualifying.
Even on this game.
Yeah, even on this game. But the amazing thing was we saw some drivers really drop through the field. They really struggled to keep up. Matex, for instance, one of them. He had an all right qualifying, struggled at the beginning. Then due to incidents, he climbed his way back through. And so, Jacob Reschut was also one of them that we saw. He had a pretty decent qualifying pace, really struggled when it came down to race pace, which is very odd to see from a driver that last season we would say was probably one of the best drivers for racecraft and race pace. Yeah, but this is the important thing is, this gap now that we're going to be seeing. Because, of course, last year's game, you could only have it in hot lap mode. You could turn on overtake, but it wasn't the fastest way to get round. And it would just waste too much ERS. Now, this year, of course, you save a lot more. You can use a lot more. You can still finish a lap on hot lap mode with about 30 to 40%. Drivers are using this advantage. And we're seeing drivers then struggle when it comes down to the race. But we will love unpredictability, don't we? And that's what we're here for.
Speaking of which, Lighty has once again not been able to finish a hot lap. Invalidated it now for the second time in a row. And that means he's in trouble. With less than 6 minutes remaining, he's only got one more shot. It looks like he's heating up his tires to go for a second attempt on the same set. If my math is correctly, I'm not sure if he's going to make it back in time to the pit lane, but he's going to try nonetheless. Another try then from Lighty, who's sitting last in the standings. Only other driver with a lap time ahead of him is Mark Schluter, but he doesn't have a chance of qualifying anymore. That means Lighty, if he's seriously unlucky... Whoa! And there he nearly goes again. If he's seriously unlucky, he will have a driver ahead of him that didn't even start a qualifying lap at all. And that's not something you would like to see as somebody who's still on the track with a whole car. But he's got his teammate ahead of him, so he can at least try to follow somebody. 25.8 through Sector 1. And he's really pushing it once again on those track limits. Let's see if he can keep it within the white lines. If third time is a charm for this man. He has finished third last race, and he's got to show something to stay in the championship fight, even though it's early in the season. If you start low in this track especially. And there he goes again. Occasion for this lap time, another invalidation, meaning he's in serious trouble, but at least he can come back in and get another set going.
I will say here that Lighty is definitely a driver not to underestimate. He might be having a tough qualifying, which is very unusual for him, I will say. Incredibly unusual. In all of the time we've watched him and all of the time I've seen him in everywhere, he's always been so strong in qualifying. But got to remember, last race, his race pace was incredible. He was really fast. Yeah. I hope this is the same thing coming round to this one. Because we saw his first sector, by the way. First sector was good enough for 7th. He had a really good first sector.
He had.
And so I think possibly we could be looking at a guy, he's going to get held up here. He's not going to be liking his teammate, because the man of Louis Welch, because Lighty's getting held up.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I was watching Joe Hoppa, who, by the way, went up to P3 out of nowhere. Was 14th, now 3rd all of a sudden. So that's a massive improvement. But yeah, Lighty, 3.5 minutes remaining. His car still has to be towed into the garage. He's going to have to be really, really quick to get this lap going. Quickly switching to Bogdan Moldovan, who comes in because he invalidated his lap. Let's see, Lucas Bison has already improved to P4. Julian, not sure if he's on his way still. His battery light is not flashing, so I think he's actually pushing. Yes, he is. He's currently behind his teammate. No, actually, never mind. He's coming in, and that means he's also going to be held up by his teammate. And that makes it very unlikely for Julian to come back out in time for another attempt. So, trying to find another driver. I believe, Epic, it's Boba who's about to finish his lap, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Up almost 0.3 per second, so he could be on for a top 3 here. So very strong. Let's see whether he can find it. He had a bit of a rough exit. He's using so much overtake, and again, oversteer hitting him hard. Doesn't find that time. He lost about a 10th there. P7 still, which is on this grid incredibly strong, but that gap between 1st and 7th is rather large.
It is just over 2/10. I'm not sure for Singapore. That's not very big for Singapore.
Well, when you think about it, Singapore and for instance, Kota have very similar lap time, few seconds difference, but overall,
but it's a very different type of track.
Yeah, quite very different. I will say I do agree with you there. But I think this track, one thing we didn't sort of come across is that this track is going to call out a different set of skills from drivers.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just going to be how to do the perfect lap at the right time or have the perfect race. Boba completely cuts a corner. It's going to be about your control, the pace and control. And with these cars, of course, you've kind of got to drift them slightly through corners. You know, you've got to have the car really on the edge. And here we're seeing some drivers, it's working for them. Other drivers, they're really struggling with it. And one of those drivers who's really struggling with it is actually the man of Jensen Rosen, I believe it is, if I'm saying it correctly. He's really struggled. He had a decent qualifying. Again, another driver who had a decent qualifying last time around. He's really struggled. Only 25.9. He's got a lot of time to find, even just to find the top 10. He's got to find about 3/10 of a second. So it's, you know, it's pretty close at the moment between everybody, but we'll have to see as they head round. It's actually Louis Welch who was the first man to start the final rounds.
He is indeed, followed by a whole slew for the drive. It's quite busy, especially in the final sector, but Louis Welch will have a quite clear track ahead of him. There's only one Aston Martin in his way as Boba goes into the pit lane, retires right there. P7 is going to be his best result of the night. Probably not something he was expecting to have. His teammate Exafox is on his way though, and he was fast last week fighting for the win. Got a bit unlucky with all the chaos and tension going on the track, so let's see what he can do. But Louis Welch, he was on provisional pole for a little while, had already done his first sector. It was an improvement. I couldn't see if at the moment how quick it was. So we're going to have to figure it out by the end of sector number 2. Right behind him is one of these Saubers. That might be Wilson Hall, I believe, currently sitting in P13. But the question is, can Louis Welch once again challenge for provisional pole position on this track? Because he looks quite strong at it. It's 2.5 of a difference to provisional pole at the moment. And the end of the second sector is coming up right now. That is only 13 milliseconds faster right now. That wouldn't bring him anything. He would stay behind Boba. But there's still that final sector. The checkered flag is out. Joe Hoppa has got that checkered flag. No surprises there because he, of course, he has already finished his last attempt. Third is going to be his best position. Louis Welch, though, what can he do? Didn't have a great race last week in Texas. Can he make it up right here in Singapore? What's it going to be? Oh, it's going to be a near crash. It was an absolute mighty disaster there, and that's completely ruined his lap. Wilson Hall stays 13th until Jacob crossed the line, goes up to P7. Tom 97 goes to P5. Then Lewis Walker with an almighty lap all the way up to P2. Exafox fastest overall, but can Conrad Bohm do it? Yes, he can. And then we switch our attention to Leroy Brown because he's potentially the only challenger there for provisional pole position. What's he gonna do across the line? He's only P3, the man who won last race and is our championship leader. Will be starting from the second row with what potentially is his main rival, Conrad Bohm, starting from pole position with Exafox alongside him. Let's see if there's anybody else still on the hot lap. It's Lucas Beisner, yeah.
Both RBs, by the way, and across the line, no improvement. Well, 300ths of an improvement, no positional improvement. I just saw Ivan Sazweir jump up the order very slightly. And we've got Julian, who is going to be the last driver to cross the line. He's not improving. He does improve very slightly. Actually finds himself behind his teammate. Very strong from the two RBs. We're seeing it again, aren't we? The two guys who are, you know, the sort of, as we would say, the fast one and the consistent one. Again, together at the same team, and this time round, they're once again being consistent, 7th and 8th. The places that, in my notes, says that they were on average between the two of them. So
it's incredible, isn't it? It just shows how consistent they are. Look at the Aston Martins, by the way, P5 and 6. Well done to both Lewis and Joe. They'll be very delighted with this result. But I think especially Exafox is going to be very happy with this one because he's on the front row. And he can have a serious challenge again for the win.
It wasn't a good day from one driver, by the way, and that one driver was none other than the man who finished second last race, Bogdan Moldovan, who had a really frustrating day, 6/10 off pole, 16th.
Ouch.
Incredibly difficult day. We also welcome back Wilson Hall, by the way. We welcome back the man.
Mhm.
Also, we had, for instance, Daniel Gottschalk, who had a pretty decent race last time around, also struggling a bit, along with Louis Welch. So quite interesting to see, that a few drivers who struggled last time around really coming out on top. But
Can
the
I
one
just
that
say,
really
Lighty,
surprised,
by the way, managed to go to
yeah,
P4 on his last attempt.
he left it till last. He really
Yeah,
did.
he likes the pressure, I think.
Yeah, he likes to pressurize us to make us notice him. But yeah, I do really think that what we saw there was the drivers giving it really everything they've got. Um, but still, I will say, like we said last week, bit scruffy still from quite a lot of drivers. The session wasn't just they're getting a couple of clean runs in; they were getting a bit all over the place, weren't they? There was a bit of sliding, few, tapping the wall a few times, even from drivers like Leroy Brown. Even he was hitting the wall a few times on his flying laps. So it hasn't been an entirely easy run, I would say. But don't count these guys out because still they are just a crazy level of speed,
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
and people are leaving the session.
yeah, I believe that like last week we were supposed to do that to remove those desync issues. So that means the lobby restart is going to take a little bit of time. It doesn't mean we can't discuss the qualifying a little bit further though, because there were some serious lap times out there, and of course, Conrad Bohm last week, very unlucky, got involved in a serious incident. By no means his fault, by the way. Therefore finished P10, but he's sitting on pole position right now, and his main rival, Leroy Brown, sitting in third. So, yeah, I'm curious to see how that one's going to work out for both of them. Leroy, of course, not that far behind on a tricky track to overtake, but P3, not that bad position to start in. I'm curious to see what the strategy, of course, is going to do, and the weather. We shouldn't forget that we're racing in Singapore, and the weather could play a serious factor in this race, couldn't it?
It really could. I mean, it would be, I think, probably one of the best races. But that's how that's how.
I'm hoping it's going to rain, to be honest.
Yeah, same. To be honest, I wanted to rain. I really wanted to rain. But no. Generally, when I look at all the drivers, I mean, Conrad Bohm, what a lap he's put in. Remember, he's also a reserve. He's also a reserve driver.
Yeah.
Which is which we saw last week with Lighty, who finished third, is incredible. But do not count. I'll join off you, but do not count out one man, and that man is very important, very close to me, and that is Exafox. He's, he is still a driver he still put on a performance that was really good.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at last week, both Alpines were involved in an incident. I believe neither of them were at fault. So they just had a little bit of a curse last week, hadn't they?
Yeah, we're seeing with McLaren, aren't we, as well? We're, none of them getting away particularly nicely. We haven't seen that in a little while, any of those teams. And, last season, it was the Alpines who were actually really good last season, along with the RBs. This season, it seems to be a bit more of a mixed bag. But it is the RBs, not the Red Bulls. It is the RBs this season that are really performing again, but under two different drivers, of course.
I should also mention that neither full-time Red Bull driver is present tonight. Maximilian has now missed both races. Same goes for Leftit in Aston Martin and Jay Kennedy for Sauber. All three of them have missed the first two races of the season. All three of them quite quick. That's really going to hurt their championship chances. And I'm hoping they'll be back soon. But
I've seen some news about those three. I have seen some news, which is it's good news though. It's some good news. Lefted is a very quiet person, as I think we know. He's a very quiet driver. You don't particularly see him on social media a lot. So, don't know. Jay Kennedy, I saw a post on X that he said about he's hoping to get back to racing very soon. He said about it a few weeks back. He actually seemed quite excited about this season, I must say, because he posted about getting into Tier 3 once again.
Mm-hmm.
So it is quite strange not to see him racing in the first two races, but of course could just be personal. So, you know, can't
we don't
blame him
know.
for that. Yeah, we don't know. We don't know. But overall, I must say it's an interesting thing. I've just noticed we're missing an Alexi tonight.
Yeah, he's also missing.
Yeah, Alexi, I've just noticed that.
Didn't finish last race.
Yeah,
No show this time.
Yeah, Maximilian Lockhart, of course, we know his name. He's never had the best of luck, has he? In Tier 3, he's always been the driver that, I mean, he is a driver that is sort of almost like a bit of a bad luck token, isn't he? He's always had this sort of bad luck in Tier 3 throughout the entire time I've commentated over him. I believe he's only finished, I think it's only 36 or 40% of the races, I'd say, that he's raced in Tier 3. So it's been a bit of a struggle for him in previous seasons. Of course, he hasn't raced so far, but I really want him to race because, he's one of my favorite drivers on the grid.
Let's hope he returns soon then, yeah.
Yeah. Because we saw him last season, didn't we? He didn't race a huge amount.
Can't remember. Did he race? I don't think he did.
It was the season before. Der Hard Champion, I believe it was. Yeah, he raced, I think it was season 17.
No, not in season 17 either.
Mm.
Man, how far back do we need to go in time to find him in Tier 3? Let's see.
Maybe very far, because...
season 16.
I've been around since season 16 or 15.
Yeah, season 16.
Yeah, season 16.
He raced twice and finished neither race.
Yeah, season 16. That's it.
It's been a while.
Yeah. I swear that was like my first season.
How quick time just flies by, doesn't it?
Yeah, that was like my second season of commentary in Tier 3. But yeah, it's an incredibly, he's one of those interesting drivers that I've seen across the board. I've seen him in many different championships, and he's always been an interesting driver, but he's always had bad luck against him. So I really do want him to race. I mean, one driver that I look at on this grid that we, of course, both know who is incredibly fast is Wilson Hall.
Yeah, what happened with him today?
Yeah, he's really had a struggle. He did mention he has, I believe he took a break from the game over the summer at some point. I believe he took a small break. I think it was a week break or 2-week break because of holiday, I believe it was. But of course, he has had his own fair share of some technical problems and stuff. But Wilson Hall, very strong driver. I think maybe he's just getting back into it. Maybe he's just getting back used to it. Of course, he's filling in for who was his teammate last season, wasn't it? The man of Jay Kennedy. So an interesting one going on there. But yeah,
Jay Kennedy was paired with Justin Arts for a while in last season.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's also like when I just look at this entire grid from start to finish, I just see so many names that I know from everywhere, and like Matthew Bassett. Sadly, he's not racing tonight, but there's so many drivers that we've got a rather mixed grid, haven't we? We've got some names from higher tiers in the past. We've got some drivers from lower tiers, some drivers who are returning to racing.
It's interesting to see them all moving around higher up, then back a little bit lower, just to find that perfect position.
I feel like I got dementia, really. All the names just merge into one.
Let's be honest. I mean, seasons are coming by very fast, obviously.
Yeah,
time really flies. Many different drivers coming and going. A lot of
familiar
familiar names, but at some point you
grid.
just can't remember who was being in which tier exactly when. So it's not strange.
I mean, last season we almost had an entire new grid, didn't we? We had a very new grid.
And a lot of different winners as well. One of the great seasons in Tier 3 especially. But we're getting back underway, I believe, as the grid has been completed. Mark Schluter had to verify his game files after crashing out, so maybe there were some issues on his side that caused him to crash out, some issues on the steering, perhaps something game-related. We will not know yet. We're going to find out, though, what the weather is going to be. I've got my telemetry software thingy up, and I saw that on the previous attempt, it would have been rainy about a quarter of the race. especially near the start, and then about the halfway point it would stop again. So that would have been fascinating. Typical Singapore weather. Let's see if that weather is going to return for this attempt. The second one, where 20 drivers are going to reaffirm their setups, then pick a strategy, and then get underway. Of course, that strategy could be very different when the rain is going to fall. I'm really looking forward to see what's going to happen. It looks like 2 drivers are a little bit slow on loading. Matex and Tim Tornimo. We're still waiting on them to get going. And then I'll switch you all back to the familiar race screen. The game overlay as usual when we get underway. There we go. Excellent. Oh, actually, Tim has left. That's not so excellent.
Not so excellent, but you know, you have to do what you have to do. Hopefully he'll be able to get back in.
He's frustrated in the chat already. He didn't get loaded in, so let's hope he can join his AI, because his car will still be there, I believe.
I will say, of course, this year's game has many bugs, many glitches, and I understand that after a certain amount of time, drivers get a bit frustrated by it. As a commentator, I'm frustrated by it. And I don't even drive. I don't even do. I'm not them. But yeah, of course, I understand some drivers' frustration. But of course, just be calm. Ask for another invite, and you'll be good.
Yeah, he says though he can't pick his setup, and I believe that's true.
Yeah, that is going to be his only problem.
Luke says there's rain. He says there is rain. Oh, our wishes have come true.
There's no rain.
Luke says there is rain.
Hey, yo, what is going on?
I'm not sure where he found that out. I mean, the telemetry, of course, will only update when the race starts, so we can't see it yet.
By the way, I'm looking at the screen. It's not raining.
Not at the moment, but I think he means there will be rain.
Oh, okay. Okay, it sounded odd at first. It sounded like you were saying there was rain now. But, yeah, I do hope there's rain. I really want rain. It makes the drivers think a bit differently. And we don't have rain a lot on this year's game, do we? We don't see rain.
There we go. The lights are going to come on right now. 3, 4, 5 red lights. Let's see if Conrad can keep pole position, whether Exafox can attack. The lights run for a very long time, but we get going. Here, round 2, tier 3. Singapore race is on the rain already. Leroy Brown with a good start. Let's see if he can go round the outside of Exafox. He can, nearly taps him round though. But the Mercedes already up to second place. Exafox now having none of it, trying to get back at him. Round the outside in turn, what's it, 5, but it's going to be quite tricky to get it going right there, and he stays for now. Down to third place, and there goes Lewis Walker. Disastrous start, spun round, and in last place already, trying to get his car turned around. Damage to the front wing, the last thing you want on a track like this. Looks like many more fights happening. There's Louis Welch getting tapped around by Joe Hoppa. Another Aston Martin involved in an incident. Already chaos is ensuing. We've barely done half the lap, and already drivers are getting spun around everywhere. Lots of position changes going on. Louis Welch versus Boba for 8th position right there. There looks like Louis Welch managed to get the move done behind them. It's Jensen Rosen versus Jacob Chashut for what's the last position in the top 10 right there. P10 is now for Jensen for the time being, but a lot of things happening all of a sudden. Daniel Gottschalk on the inside in turn 13, not a place you want to overtake usually, but he decides to go for it anyway against the Haas of Jacob as well. Jacob losing positions left, right and center, but it looks like the Williams is going to have to back out of it. Wilson Hall getting ahead of Bogdan Moldovan back to the position where he started in. Bogdan challenging him hard for that position, but it looks like for now the top 3 is coming away unscathed, but Exafox lost a position and Conrad has managed to get more than a second of a gap already. Now let's quickly see which tires they all chose. All of them on the hards except for Tim, because his AI decided to go for the medium tires. I'm not sure if he's going to join back, but everybody decided to go for the hard tires at the start, which might mean the rain will be coming down at the latter half of the race.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting when it does come to the end of the race. If it does come at the end of the race, of course, it's going to change people's idea. Do they want to stop now? Do they want to stop later? I do see everybody, I believe, if I'm correct, almost everybody's on the hard tires. Yes, only Tim Tanimo and Lewis Walker on the mediums. Yeah, only those 2 drivers currently on the medium tires. So only realistically, everybody was on the hards.
Leroy Brown, by the way, under pressure. Yeah, he's lost 2 positions. Exafox went past, and he struggled in sector 2, and now Lighty is past as well. I'm watching the telemetry right now. By the end of the race, it's going to be a thunderstorm. So it's going to be absolute chaos by the end of it. It just depends on how many safety cars there will be when the rain is going to hit the track. But this is going to be fascinating to watch, isn't it?
It very much will. You know, a lot of real life drivers call the cars like boats. Let's see whether they'll work in water.
Especially the Alpines were boats, apparently.
Yeah.
That's well.
Conrad Bone, what a start he's had. Xbox closed in slightly. He really got away well, didn't he? You know, he really
perfect start.
Everybody else was battling, and he's just been able to walk away from the rest. He's already down by turn 1 before the others even hit turn 1. And you know, it's something we didn't see last race, of course. But this is the interesting thing about Singapore, is that it is a bit different, isn't it? It's a bit of it's a track where you can run away with it, where it isn't so easy to catch up. In sort of, even with DRS, it isn't so easy. Of course, one of the changes many people have realised on this year's game, and I've realised, is the laps. There's less laps to Singapore now.
31, yeah.
Yeah, they reduced the amount of laps. It was, what was it last year? 30?
Well, the usual race number of laps in the 100% is 62. So it should be 31. It's actually...
Yeah.
No, it was 61 earlier. So 30 laps it was 2 years ago. And until the track changed, of course, then the amount of laps changed as well to 1 more. That means we now have 1 more as well.
Very nice still, either way. But of course, as we know, this is one of the longest races. This is the longest race.
Yeah, even with 31 laps, yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, even with the lower laps, it's the time it takes, of course, before it used to take even longer, which made the track really difficult, of course. But this is the track where drivers' concentration, you talk about Monaco being difficult and where the drivers need to concentrate. The drivers need to concentrate just as much around here, because the worst thing about here is that there's not only track limits, there are still walls. And the curves do not like you and do not like the cars on this year's game. And so that's the one thing drivers are going to be looking out for. You know, Monaco, the curves are okay. You can get around the curves pretty fine. But here, of course, there's that extra element of that it is a bit more difficult.
Speaking of which, yeah, but look at Lighty. He's on a roll. He just set the fastest lap of the race. He's absolutely going to overtake Exafox right now. Exafox already saw that one coming. Up he goes. Lighty, he is on a flyer, man. He's absolutely nailing it at the moment. And now let's see if he can keep up those fastest laps and try and catch Conrad Bohm, the man you just mentioned, because Lighty might potentially be a threat to him, and that will be interesting, as Lewis Walker now, of course, on those fresh mediums, sets the fastest lap of the race. But he's far behind, and of course the AI of Tim Tornimo is also losing positions fast. Leroy Brown, though, can I say, he's struggling hard to keep up in the top 3 right now. For a moment I thought he was coming under pressure from Lucas Beisner as well, but looks like he's shaken him off as well, so in a moment's time he might just be driving around in no man's land, just on his own, like he is right now.
Yeah, I'd say around this track the worst place to be is no man's land. I think we can all agree on that. That is the worst place to be, because you can't catch the drive in front, the drive behind you can't catch either. But Leroy Brown is sitting right on that edge now with for DRS. He really is. Look at that, it's just gone over a second. He might not actually get DRS now. We'll have to see when we get round to the pit straight, of course, whether he has gotten it or not. He hasn't gotten it. He hasn't got DRS. I think we're going to start to see a split now between the front 3 and the rest of the grid.
Yeah, Lighty is catching fast, isn't he?
He is, but look at that first sector. Very strong from Conrad Bohm. He's just increased that gap by a 10th already. So don't count Lighty out, as he is also under attack from the Alpine at the same time, as there goes Exafox. Down the inside he goes. And a nice move going into sector 2.
Oh, Joe Hoppa nearly getting spun around by Lucas Beisner right there. They're fighting a little bit further back. He's now getting tailed by Tom 97, Louis Welch, Boba, and a lot of other cars that are still within DRS range. There is another group forming behind P12, led by Ivan Santamaria, which is surprising. He's not got a lot of race pace tonight either, it seems. Oh, Joe Hoppa struggling hard, by the way, through turns 11, 12, and 13, trying to stay with Lucas Beisner, the man who he nearly overtook for position, as Daniel Gottschalk actually does make the move on Jacob Jeschut, but they're still side by side. What's going to happen here? Is he going to try to go around the outside? No, of course not. That would be most unwise in turn 14. So up he goes, Jacob now back into P11, but nearly with a second of a gap to Jensen Rosen, who is still sitting in P10 quite happily. But Daniel's putting on the pressure big time to the man in the highest right there. He really wants to get past, but Jensen is having absolutely none of it at the moment. The gap in front, by the way, suddenly has increased from 1.5 to 2.2 seconds in the span of one whole lap. That is quite incredible. Conrad has turned up the pace a lot, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was actually going to mention about. I was going to say that. But,
oh.
Lewis Walker.
Oh, no, he's out.
Virtual safety car.
Oh, dear.
Ooh. But luckily, it is only just a virtual safety car. This isn't going to hugely help anybody. But Conrad Bohm, this man is putting on a performance. He really is. But I must say, it's interesting to see how Lighty again is coming out as clearly third or second fastest. By the way, Leroy Brown has just closed up again because Exafox has slowed down quite a lot.
Ooh, I don't think Lighty is going to like that one. They do not know yet when this virtual safety car is going to come in, but it shouldn't be long now. The car of Lewis Walker is already gone. So unfortunate in his first race this season, I believe it was, and already out so quickly on lap 6 only. This is bringing the rain a little bit closer to the middle part of the race, by the way, because you know it's going to be it's a little bit slower at the moment. We're waiting for it to get back underway. We're just watching the the second and third place battle right now to see whether they're going to speed up. Exafox is, well, look at the gap. He's managed to increase it to 4 seconds to Conrad, and now only now he's decided to speed up again because the race is about to get back underway then, or at least it looks like it's going to be. What's going to happen here? He's closing the gap a little bit again, and then slowing down a bit, and there we go. DRS enabled straight away, and Leroy Brown is caught up straight away, back in DRS, and another chance for him to get going. Lucas Bijster has been caught napping a little bit, as has Joe Hopper, because he's under pressure right now from the Mercedes behind. Tom 97 is getting ever closer. Speaking of getting very close, Boba got nearly a little bit of a bump there from Jensen Rosen, fighting for 9th position. So everywhere you look, there's fights going on, except for 1st position, where Conrad is reigning happily and lonely.
I have to say, it's a pretty good start from any of the Singapore Grand Prix I've commentated here in WOR. The leader, by the way, has never led after lap 5. He's been overtaken by then. So Conrad Bohm's making a new record. So I will say quite an interesting one. Let's see how long he can hold on to it. But that was in my opinion, that was very smart play from Exafox over Lighty. He didn't, in some degree, Exafox didn't lose. Oh, big loss on the rear.
Nearly jinxed him there.
Yeah, very, very much. I don't want to be doing that just today. For the rest of the season, I'll do it after today. Yeah, Exafox, he pushed it back, and it looked like he was actually backing Lighty up, which he did. But then at the end, we saw him push, so it was a really, really good play from Exafox, and that is the type of strategy we like to see. The type of strategy a lot of these drivers need to use.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? Just using brains over brawl, and it's already a night and day difference between this week and last week. Literally, because it's night right here, but also figuratively, because the racing appears to be a whole lot cleaner, at least for now, as Lighty is getting very close again to Exafox, and both of them are starting to pull away a little bit again from Leroy Brown, until, of course, that DRS is going to come up again. Lucas Bijster is getting closer and closer to the Mercedes as well. The other Mercedes of Tom 97 is still having a little bit of a look at the Aston Martin of Joe Hoppa here and there. Looks like the only one is going to make an overtake is going to be Lighty indeed for 2nd place once again. The McLaren moves up there. Exafox lets him go. Of course, he knows working together at this stage to catch Conrad is more important than fighting hard. Whoa, Lighty having a poor entry and exit out of the corner right there, nearly allowing Exafox and banging his rear right to the wall as well. Lighty suddenly struggling a little bit. Exafox having to hold back because overtaking here would slow all of them down to a crawl pretty much and causing potential chaos, and the leader to get away again. But look at that, 3.3 seconds already, as Jensen is the first driver to get a 3-second time penalty for track limit warnings already at lap 8. But Conrad is driving away quite easily, with Lighty making some mistakes on this lap.
Yeah, not what you want to see, but this is the thing. Is it just me, or is P2 seems to be a bit of an unlucky position, shall we say?
It feels like you don't want to be there.
Yeah, it really doesn't, because look at Lighty. Even he's not catching, and he was catching. Now he isn't so much. He's having to use a lot of ERS, by the way, to be able to catch up. So I'm not sure what is going on there, really, with the McLaren or the Alpine or anybody who's in P2, because we saw, I believe it was Leroy Brown who got up to there a little bit earlier on, and then he's just seemed to drop back through.
Some sort of curse almost.
Yeah, maybe we'll see. Don't start curses, please.
No.
Yeah, the drivers don't.
I promise.
Look, one interesting start we saw was actually from Louis Welch. Up to P8 already. He's chasing down Tom 97, who has struggled in the last lap or two. His lap time has actually decreased quite heavily. He's actually going about, realistically, he would be going about 2.5 tenths slower than Louis Welch at the moment. So there is a bit of a struggle from Tom 97 and the battle over P7. But this battle is going all the way up to P2 with Louis Welch's teammate, Lighty, up there. But it's the man of Louis Welch who is aiming for that P2.
They're going round and round. We're already at lap 9. We're not that far away anymore from the halfway point. We can't, of course, see what the sky is doing because it's quite dark out there. So we do not know whether it's overcast or completely, I wouldn't say sunny, but bright out there at the moment. Clear skies. We do not know when the rain is going to hit exactly. But I expect it to be around lap 20, 25-ish. That's why all of these drivers have chosen the hards. Otherwise, we would have seen a mix, I'm sure, of different tire strategies with some on the mediums and some on the hard tires. Would have been brave for them to start on the softs when the rain would have been hit. Anyway, lap 10 out there already. The gap to P1, 3.5 seconds. Exafox staying behind the McLaren right now, and a long train, of course, behind them. It's a DRS train all the way down, once again, to P15. Bogdan is just hanging on by a small, tiny thread right there as he comes around turn 3. Trying to hang on, he manages to get DRS once again with Matex and Julian in tow. Julian having lost, of course, a lot of positions after they come together with Joe Hopper. Something he didn't really like, I'm sure. Daniel Gottschalk, in the meanwhile, still fighting with Bogdan Moldovan. Bogdan getting pushed wide because Daniel decided to drift into the corner right there. But he still can't get past the Haas because the DRS train at the moment is so incredibly strong there. Sorry, it actually isn't Bogdan, it's Jacob. A little bit of a mix-up right there for P11. Fighting there for no points whatsoever. Maybe they should try and work together to try and take Jensen's 10th position, but Daniel wants to get in front as soon as humanly possible.
Yeah, very much. I do agree, but you said about Bogdan incorrectly, but Bogdan is not having a race of his life, is he?
No, he isn't. Absolutely not. He's also fighting in Williams, but not Daniel's one.
The man is, you know, he got a podium last week round, you know, P2, he got quite close to winning. But it's been a very, almost, it was a bit of a sloppy qualifying performance from him, I must say. I watched one or two of his laps, he really struggled, couldn't put it together. Not what you expect of a driver of his caliber and his pace and consistency. But then, of course, this just has not been the start he's wanted. You know, he hasn't had a single lap where I'd really say he's really been able to make a move or do really anything. You know, it's just sat there in this sort of DRS train where he hasn't been overtaken and he hasn't done any overtaking either. So he's just kind of sitting here waiting for something to happen.
I feel like they're going to be waiting a very long time, but because I think the only time these drivers are going to come in is when they need to switch to intermediate. They're going to stretch it out, I have this feeling, for as long as possible to make sure they don't have to make another pit stop, because pit stops here are quite slow. Singapore pit lane is slow. It's quite lengthy for such a short track, actually. So I'm curious to see what they are going to do, whether they are going to realize maybe the rain isn't coming in at all, but at least for now it looks like it's going to happen. Well, I wouldn't say sooner, but it's going to happen anyway. Leroy Brown, by the way, has found a little bit of pace again. He's now pressuring Exafox to get back onto the podium. In fact, he's really close. Thinking a little bit about a move into turn 14, but that would have been a bold and brave move indeed. And potentially a very dangerous one, because it's very difficult to overtake right there. Just a short stretch of DRS. The best, of course, place to overtake is after turn 5 on the biggest DRS stretch in Sector 1 and the start of Sector 2. But maybe he can pull off something special right here, because we've seen him lead the race by quite a margin, as Conrad is doing right now, so he'll not be too happy driving around only in 4th place. Even though Conrad finished in 10th, the point difference is still going to be in his favor anyways. But he wants to make up those positions as soon as he can. His teammate 3 positions back. Tom still hasn't managed to get past Joe, and meanwhile Joe is getting awfully close to Lucas Bison right here. And Lucas, of course, not yet involved in an incident. He's been lucky so far, so let's hope the luck stays on his side. There goes, well, Nearly goes Exafox for a move, but he decides to stay behind for a little bit longer, but giving the Lighty the hurry up because the gap has now grown to 4 seconds already.
Yeah, on that Conrad Bone, we've just seen over 4 seconds now. The gap has grown by about 7/10 since the last lap. He is putting in some laps of brilliance. He really is. I mean, 7/10 in one lap is massive to find. But Lighty is not having the race of his life, is he? He's really struggling. ERS is not helping him. He's got quite a bit, but he doesn't seem to really want to use it. And to some degree, I'm going to say this now, so nobody gets disappointed, but I do think Lighty has changed his objective of not to catch the leader, but just to try and stay in P2.
Yeah. Ooh, Exafox, I believe, had a poor exit. For a moment, Leroy was side by side with him, and Leroy is definitely showing now that he's up for a fight to get back into the position that he started in, which was, of course, P3. Exafox started in P2, and look at that. Exafox struggling out the final corner as well. Some overtake moves coming up from behind. It's Joe Hopper and Lucas Beiser side by side in turn 1. What can they do? Well, Lucas Beiser has to go off because Joe went a little bit wide right there. I don't think that was intentional. But Joe Hopper did get his own space right there, moves up into P5, got a bit of a gap now to P4, but Lucas Beiser is not going to give up. There goes Louis Welch, potentially for a move, because back down to P8. What's going to happen right here then? Now it's Tom knocking on Lucas's door. He's going to try to go around the outside, side by side in turn 7 right there, but he's got to yield. No, he isn't. He decides to put his foot down and then finally moves ahead, but he's still stuck behind the Aston Martin. At least, though, Tom 97 up to P6, now only 2 places behind his own teammate right there. The Mercedes duo, in terms of points at least, are doing, I think, at the moment, the best out of all of them.
Yeah, I will say, definitely, but I just want to point out, Tom 97 looked like he had a bit of lag.
I didn't see it.
Around on my screen slightly, so I'm not sure whether it's just his connection problems or whatever, but it was definitely an interesting one because Lucas Reisner on my screen moved over like Tom 97 wasn't there, and then he appeared there all of a sudden, and Lucas Reisner I think had a little bit of a fright. Yeah, one driver we have basically not even really noticed is Joe Hopper. We've got to talk about this man because he's having an underrated race here. His teammate, of course, out. The man of Lewis Walker. And now we've got Joe Hopper, who's last of the Aston Martins, last of the Racing Green. And he's going round, and he's actually keeping up.
Yeah,
and he's keeping up very nicely.
I'm not sure if he's going to be under scrutiny by the FIA, as he managed to spin Julian around, who's now driving in the back of this very, very long group. But here comes Leroy, though. Is he finally going to go for it? He's pushing Exafox to the limit. He's going to go on the inside. A big dive right there, but Exafox is having none of it. He's going to have the inside line right here. Where's Leroy going to go? He decides to stick his Mercedes nose right around the outside, and now he's got the inside of the corner, and he manages to get it on. Or does he? Because Exafox is still somewhat there. But the man in the Alpine decides it's wiser to yield because already the gap to Lighty has grown to nearly 1 second, and that would have been disastrous for this group to let the guy in P2 get away with it. And look at that, 1 second right now. Will the rear ring? There goes Joe Hopper though. Wow, what an exceptional dive right there on Exafox. Exafox will be very unhappy with that indeed, because that nearly turned into an all-out collision between the two. And for now, the Alpine stays ahead, but I believe I didn't see Leroy's wing open, but it seems he's found the pace at long last. When the race continues, he gets faster and faster, and now he manages to get the train along back into Lighty's rear view mirror with the DRS once again. Lighty struggling a bit out of the corner right there. So the fight for second place is still quite hot out there, but it looks like another Mercedes might go for a move. Tom 97 getting very close to Joe Hopper's rear right there. Is he going to go for a move in turn 1? No, just a little bit too far back. But man, these fights are happening everywhere right now.
They very much are, and I must say they're getting quite nasty, aren't they? You know, there's definitely some battling going on. You know, they're not really treating each other. They're not really treating each other like they're there. They're really pushing themselves to the limit, aren't they? They're really going all the way. But I will say, this battling is not helping anybody because they're just falling further behind the race leader. They're just falling further and further behind. I mean, the fact that now Conrad Bowman has almost an entire corner difference between him
Oh, sorry to interrupt you in the back of the field. After Daniel got past Jacob, a little bit of an incident happened between Jacob and I believe it was Mark Schluter, who's now driving around with just barely more than half a front wing. And that's the race for the German over. Once again, a disastrous race for the Ferrari driver. A nightmare qualifying, a nightmare race so far. It's not really happening for him, isn't it?
No, not really. I mean, we've all got to agree that his season is really coming up to be miserable.
Yeah, I hope this isn't a trend for him, because it's not what we're used to from him.
Yeah, I mean, Ferrari altogether, they seem to be having a bit of a struggle, aren't they? 17th and 18th at the moment. His teammate Ivan Sansbury not having what we would call a normal performance from him. But the man who's finding himself slowly back up the order, who didn't have a good size, Lucas Baesner, he slowly found his way back through the order. He had a bit of a rocky start, like his teammate, but now he found himself in P7, and he is definitely slightly faster than Tom 97, as it shows that in about 1 to 2 laps time he'll be able to make a move.
Both Ferraris have come in for a pit stop. That's going to be a long, long wait for Mark right there, because it turns out Ivan was involved in the same incident as his own teammate. And now Mark is going to be well over half a lap behind the race leader right there. Fresh wheels, of course, fresh wing there as well, but he's going to be a long, long way back right now. An absolute nightmare then, which has gotten far, far worse for the Ferrari team. In the meanwhile, Leroy Brown is putting on serious pressure, and now it's Exafox who's no longer able to keep up, with Joe Hoppa and Tom 97 in tow. Same goes for Lucas Beisler, he isn't too far away either. It looks like the man who started in second place is now barely able to keep hold of P4.
Very much. We have to have a little chat, don't we, about the man of Exafox. He's having an up and down race. He seems to have almost like an espresso hit, isn't it? It's almost like a coffee hit of pace, where for sort of 1 or 2 laps, he's actually really fast, and he's going faster than, for instance, Leroy Brown and Lighty. But then he just seems to really have a struggle for the next maybe 4 or 5 laps. He seems to really struggle, and he's had that now, sadly. His last sort of coffee shot has sort of disappeared, and it's been gone for at least about 7 or 8 laps. He's really struggled to keep up now, and it's only really the corners that are really keeping him up with the rest. It's really without it, he wouldn't be keeping up here. He would be outside of a second.
Here comes Leroy Brown for second place. At long last, he's back in business now. There he goes. Lighty tried to defend a little bit, but he knew that wouldn't help all too much. And now he's once again ahead of Exafox, who's also managed to close the gap because of the tiny bit of fighting going on. The gap to the leader now increased to 5.5 seconds. But we're going to find out now if Leroy Brown is the man to try and close the gap once again, because he did so in Texas last week as well, trying to get into that lead, and he finished in first position. But now he's got a long way to go. With a look already, 3/10 gain through this particular bit of the track already. Let's see if he can keep up the trend and keep the others in tow, because Lighty would absolutely like it if Leroy can close that gap. Back to 5.2. It's we're going to have to wait a few laps to see whether Leroy can do it or not.
Yeah, very much. I think Leroy Brown, he's really shown his pace, and to be honest, let's just be completely honest, he's been probably the most consistent driver across these 2 races. Probably the, on average, best driver across these 2 races. But, and clearly, he's going to keep the lead of the championship. But this definitely has been a bit of a far cry from his last race, hasn't it? It's been a very different conversation. It's been more of a battle with sort of for the podium more than it has been just a dominant lead.
Yeah.
And that's something that, for instance, drivers like Leroy Brown, of course, won't want to be hearing, is that change all of a sudden within one race. But it could just be tracks. It could just be he's not as good here. But I will say that he might be finding some competition now, and as of course the season goes on, he'll know more who is his competition. But so far, I will say, out of these first 2 races, I wouldn't say there's a specific driver who's really been his competition. Probably the closest driver is Lighty. Probably the closest.
In terms of results, yes, but I feel like Conrad is most on his race pace. Because Lighty right now is dropping back a slight bit. We saw Exafox even pressuring the McLaren right there for position. So yeah, it's just hard to tell. It's a little bit early still, but I feel like the 2 protagonists, so to say, of this season might be Conrad and Leroy. But we'll find out later when the season is about the halfway point, and we can properly say who are really going to have a grab for the title. For now, though, lap 18 out of 31. We haven't seen... Actually, never mind, scratch that. There is rain falling right now as I speak. It's happened at lap 18. This is the moment that all the drivers have been waiting for, and the reason why they've put on the hard tires already. Lucas Beisner nearly sliding off the track, trying to stay with Tom 97 right there. And now we're going to find out who of these drivers are going to be masters in the rain. Already Tom 97 putting Joe Hopper under pressure. Same goes for Louis Welch against Lucas Beisner in turn 1. But both of them a little bit too far away to make a proper move. They were switching back to Leroy Brown, who's managed to close the gap to 5 seconds and even a little bit under that. So in the rain conditions, potentially the Mercedes driver might be faster. Let's see how the conditions are going to swap the skills around for all these drivers as they continue to race on. The top 8 is now entirely separated from Jensen Rosen, and below both of the Haas drivers are having a bit of a tussle right there as Bogdan Moldovan is suddenly made up a lot of positions and he finds himself in P11 out of nowhere pretty much. Jacob is sliding around the track. It's getting damper and damper very quickly. I wouldn't be surprised if either this lap or next lap they're going to put on the intermediates.
Yeah, me too. I've noticed Leroy Brown's going actually quite well in these conditions because he's closing up a huge amount to Conrad Bone. He's already closed up by about half a second. Maybe this could be the way to go. But for the first time this season, we're going to be having a lap car. That was Tim.
It's the AI, Tim, yeah.
Yeah, it is, but it's still a lapped car. It's still a lapped car. I'll take it. But we've just seen Tom 97 make a move on Joe Hopper.
He's managed to get past. I also see Boba and Mark have decided to switch to the intermediates already. Let's see whether that was a good choice or not. Of course, well, there they go. There goes the race leader. Now we know whether that was a good choice, because it was. Everybody is coming in right now for their intermediate tires. Oh, Lighty, what have you done? Lighty came in too fast. Might have been bumped into the pit lane by Exafox, potentially removable then. But that would be a disaster if that was by his own fault for his racing aspirations right there. He's also getting now moved down to P5 for a little while as he gets back past everybody. Julian and Jacob have decided to stay out because DRS is, it's still enabled. So technically that means these tires should hold on for a little bit longer. Let's see if the rear wing still opens. Yes, it still does. So then, might Jacob and Julian have pulled off a masterclass in strategy? We'll know very, very soon. Look at Boba, though. He's already managed to get back up to P7. Exafox is down in P6 now. And Joe Hopper has been passed by the Alpine right there, who is on those inters for a lap longer than he is. And DRS disabled right now, which means Jacob and Julian's gamble will not turn out too well, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's a risk that they took, but of course, it's the way
they didn't have a lot to lose anyway, so.
No, they really didn't. Still, the man who's gotten away incredibly well from this is Conrad. Because he's lost a bit more time. He is struggling a bit more on those inters. But he's been able to hold that gap, hasn't he? He's really been able to hold on to that, and that's the important thing. He didn't have cars going past him, slowing him down in the pits. So that would have been the worst thing. But for Leroy Brown, I must say he's looking pretty decent on those intermediates because he's closing in.
He is, 4.5 seconds right now. We also see other drivers struggling hard. Tom is losing a lot of time to Lucas, and Jensen has caught up to him fast. In the meanwhile, Julian has overtaken Jacob, while both of them are sliding their way into the pit lane right now. And they're going to be falling behind the pack quite a long way, I'm afraid to say. As Conrad Bohm has already managed to get past them. Leroy Brown is also moving around the final corner. Jacob has retired from the session in the pit lane, frankly. I'm not sure why.
I think he just knew he'd be last, because you can just see the drivers going by. By the time he would have exited the pits, he would have been far outside of the top 10. You could see he would have been below top 15. He would have come out in P7.
Yeah, but still, there's all the chances of a safety car in these conditions, isn't there?
Yeah.
There is like throwing in the towel a little bit too early, if I'm honest, but oh well.
Maybe, but of course it is up to him. Maybe he was on the hope of points, and sometimes it's not worth it, is it? You know, sometimes it isn't worth it to finish the race when you know that there is no points to be gained.
Fair enough.
Even though there are still 10 laps left, and anything could happen, especially because in dry conditions this track is difficult enough. To go to wet conditions could be something even better. But in the end, Jacob Reschu not having the start to a season he would have been hoping for.
No. Bad start to his first race, unfortunately. Daniel, though, is loving these conditions. He's already found his way into P9, is now going to harass Tom 97 for a little bit right there. Jensen Rousen back down to P10. Louis Welch not having a great time right there because, of course, they had to double stack. They were close together when they came into the pit lane, and that caused Louis to lose a lot of positions. He's out of the top 10 right now, getting pressured by Bogdan Moldovan in the meanwhile. Meanwhile, his own teammate Lighty with that 10-second penalty, which I do not know whether it can be removed or not, is pressuring Leroy Brown for second place once again. And the gap between P1 and 2 is opening up quite rapidly, already up to 5 seconds already. So it looks like once again at the start of the stint, Leroy Brown struggling once more.
It's quite true, but I think we've just seen that this whole race, haven't we? I think we've just seen that Conran Bohm and Lighty have probably been the two fastest drivers out there. Leroy Brown, I think, had a good run, and now he's under attack straight away.
Very much under attack
from Lighty. But yeah, like I said, I think he had a good run, but I don't think it would have been a race-long run on, being second.
Here he comes, Lighty then around the inside, so to say. No problem whatsoever for the McLaren as he goes back into second place. Leroy Brown back down to third. Exafox in the meanwhile finds himself with his teammate at the moment, as Boba has done a brilliant job going in a lap earlier. It's really helped him out quite a lot, hasn't it? Because he was nowhere earlier on. I'm not even sure where he was, somewhere around the top 10 I believe, and he finds himself in P5 all of a sudden. So it's a brilliant strategic choice from him, and potentially a chance for the podium as well.
Very much. I think this is strategy. This is what it's all about. It's just about strategy. And this is how it's going to be till the end of the race. It's not the strategy of when to stop or what tyres to go to. It's now the strategy of when to make moves and, really, would it be useful or not? And this is what the drivers are going to be thinking about for these last 10 remaining laps.
Yeah, I feel like the full wets might be coming out. The telemetry says the thunderstorm is going to hit quite soon. And I'm really curious to see what that means in this game. A thunderstorm is a rare thing indeed, to see that little icon with a little lightning flash at the bottom of that cloud seeing pop up on your telemetry screen. So I'm curious to see what that is going to bring to the track tonight. Singapore potentially is going to drown right here in the rain tonight. Let's see if the drivers will not drown themselves in all of the racing that they are fighting with each other. It looks like Joe Hoppa and Lucas Beisner are fighting it out at the moment for P6. Down the field, battles happening as well between Louis Welch and Bogdan Moldovan for what is P11 right now, as Tim Tornemo's left AI car is driving somewhere in between them. The other Sauber, by the way, of Tim Tornemo, had Wilson Hall, I should say, is not having a great race himself either. He's currently just ahead of Matex, who is also just hanging around in 14th place. A little bit lonely, the both of them right there. But up and down the field, it looks like Daniel is still putting on pressure. This time he's really close to Tom 97, who can't get to grips for now with those conditions that is happening right there. And Daniel is going to get past him sooner or later, I feel like, because look at this. He's taking the corners very differently. He might even pull off a move in turn 14 right there. If he can take the risk. He actually does go for the move in turn 13, I should say, but he doesn't get enough speed out of the corner because Tom, of course, had more room right there to make a better exit. So Daniel will have to stick a little bit longer behind the Mercedes for now. But look at this, will bump a little bit right there, causing Tom to go a little bit wide. He will not be too happy about that one, but Daniel really is giving him a literal hurry up to get going.
Yeah, I think it's something that he needs. And now, there goes Daniel Gottschalk down the inside. He's made that move on Tom 97. Tom is not having a fun day on those intermediates. I said to you before, if the race goes, dry and he keeps it the way he needs it to be, he could have a really good race. He's not been having that. Boba gets the penalty now. But of course, remember, Tom's going to gain back.
Have you seen where Lighty is buggered off to?
Yeah, he's really fast on these intermediates. If I was to say this, I think he's set his car up more for this.
I wouldn't be surprised at all, but he still can't catch Conrad. But Leroy is having a big struggle right now because Exafox is getting closer and closer, as are the other cars right behind them. It's not a happy day anymore for Leroy. He was happy in the dry conditions, very unhappy in the wets, which will be far more wet very soon. I cannot tell you when these full wet tires are going to be possible. I'm looking at the onboard camera and the rain is falling down hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. But like you were saying, Leroy Brown's not having as much of a fun day as Lighty. Lighty could just pull 3 seconds ahead at any point.
Yeah, but it's
And
a
Leroy
10-second penalty.
It's 10 seconds?
It's
Oh,
10.
no.
It was for speeding in the pit lane. I think that might have been caused by Exafox bumping in a little bit too fast right there. Probably not Exafox's fault, but they were just so close together when I saw them driving around in the pit lane that might be removable. But if not, he's quite screwed.
Yeah, very much. It would be disappointing if he can't get that removed. It very much would be very disappointing. But if he can, of course, he might be on for actually a rather good day.
Leroy Brown struggling, as we said. Lap 25, the end of the race is nearing. Are those full wets still going to come out? I don't think the difference is going to be big enough anymore to get themselves much faster than those inters, because how long is the pit stop here in Singapore? 5 seconds, something like that?
Yeah, but of course it is wet, so remember it is going to be even slower.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be... I don't think they're going to switch to the full wets anymore. It's too late for that. Yeah. So they're going to have to cope with these conditions on those inters.
I think this is the point where if I was being honest, Conrad Bohm I think has won already. I'm not trying to spoil the party, but I think very much dominance. He's led every single lap.
No mistakes anywhere.
Every single lap, yeah. And even on these tires, of course, this was probably the only time that it could change.
But it didn't.
Yeah, but he's been incredibly dominant all day, and nobody can disagree with that.
No. Even the people in the chat right now, a lot of Polish fans, of course, cheering on Conrad Bohm to get his first win this season. Had a disaster last week in Texas, finished only 10th. But he might turn on the championship fight a little bit more right now, as he is hoping, of course, that Leroy Brown is going to be overtaken by many, many more cars, as the man in the Mercedes is struggling to keep the Alpines behind, especially Exafox is piling on the pressure a lot. Boba is hanging on a little bit behind with Joe Hoppa in tow, as well as Lucas Beisner. Daniel Gottschalk is making his way up to that top 7 as well. He's doing a brilliant job, isn't he? He's just been hanging around outside the top 10 all race, and then when the rain starts falling, he's now in P8 and potentially a bit more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I just want to point something out here. The driver who's really fallen through the orders since going to the intermediates is Louis Welch. He's really struggled on these tires.
Yep, he's just got a penalty.
Struggling for a long while, yeah. And he's about to be overtaken by Bogdan Moldovan, who we never thought would be coming back into a battle for possibly points if he can get within, of course, that time penalty of Jensen Rosen.
Yep. We shouldn't forget those time penalties right there. There's at the moment 5 of them have been done by track limits. One of them is for speeding in the pit lane. Sorry. You can see the track is just shiny with wetness, isn't it? It's just so wet at the moment. These would normally, I think, be absolute full wet conditions. Look at the camera right here. The track is white out of the light right there. It's like it's been snowed upon. That's how bright it is at the moment in the Singapore lights right now. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Almost literally right there. In the meanwhile, Exafox is still trying to get past Leroy Brown. Still unsuccessful though. I'm watching who's got warnings right now. Matex is now on 5 warnings and getting very close to a second track limit penalty right there. But it doesn't really matter for him anyway. There's a car behind him 9 seconds down the road. And he's fighting for 13th place. So it won't really matter to him whatsoever. In the meanwhile, though, Conrad Bohm reigning very easily in the lead position. Lighty trying to catch him. He's closed the gap a tiny bit, but he will need a miracle to close the gap by a whole lot more than that. 5 seconds and just 5 laps is going to be nigh on impossible in these conditions.
Yeah, I think this very much has been a day just to sort of just remark on how good Conrad Bohm has been. And if anybody tries to say he made a mistake here, we didn't lead every single lap, that doesn't matter, because he has been in just another racing series almost. Another level of F1, you know. It's what we saw from Max Verstappen in real life last year, isn't it? You know, or Brazil, for instance, this year. That, you know, just such dominant performances, but this has really been probably the most dominant drive from any Tier 3 driver I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary. And on a track like this, in these conditions, even though, yeah, Lighty is closing it a little bit more, but will be too little too late, I'm afraid, to get the job done right there. Meanwhile, Joe Hoppa getting awfully close right there to Boba. Lucas Beisner is still hanging around to make a move as well. Will he return to being Mr. Consistent? And meanwhile, Daniel Gottschalk right behind him already, but with 3 seconds to his name, he will, well, not necessarily finish P7 if he overtakes Lucas. But there are still some drivers behind him. Them also have some penalties. Tom 97, after being overtaken by the Williams, is able to hang on quite easily at the moment. Because the drivers in front of Daniel are struggling just as much as he is. So pace-wise, they're pretty much even. I think Daniel out of this group might be the fastest. Now that Lighty has moved away from them.
Yeah.
Look at the rain, man. It's insane, isn't it?
It's really getting heavy. But we're going to talk about this gap between Lighty and Lee. Yeah, like, when I look at this entire grid, one thing I've got to look at is Boba. He has got that penalty, of course, against him. But the Alpines have been really good again, haven't they? We spoke about this
back
last
in business.
Yeah,
they had a
really
curse
are.
last week, but no longer. Look at them go. P4, P5, of course. It will be P7, I believe, for Boba, or maybe even P8, because Tom is quite close as well. But still, overall, not too bad. And strategy-wise, absolutely a very smart move indeed. I'm trying to find out, because I saw one other driver came in a lap earlier than the rest. But I can't find him at the moment. So it looks like it was only Boba then who decided to go a little bit earlier than the rest. And it's paid off quite well for him. Just very unfortunate with the time penalty right there. Anyway, just about 3.5 laps to go, and then this race will be completely over. The gap now between P1 and 2 up to 6 seconds. Conrad Bohm has added a little bit of extra pace onto these final few laps, and Lighty is nowhere to be found right now. In fact, Leroy Brown has even closed the gap a little bit again to well under 3 seconds right there until he exited the corner when Lighty was quite clearly faster. Safety car! Safety car! Why? What happened? What did we miss? What happened? Oh, I know. It happens in these conditions. When the rain gets so severe, the safety car does come out. This is a nightmare for Conrad. And everybody has got a penalty. If Lighty can get his penalty removed right now, it's going to be a major disaster.
No points.
No points, but if he does get it removed, he still has a shot of winning it, hasn't he?
Yeah, now he does.
Yeah, this is wild.
I feel really bad for Conrad because his drive has been phenomenal, and if he loses the lead or the win,
yeah, that would be a big shame.
Yeah, it really would.
He's currently the most deserved driver to win the race, but you know, whoever crosses the line first will win it, whatever your opinion is about it. I mean, this is just a part of racing, isn't it? It's like real life. If the rain gets too heavy, the safety car comes out. I completely forgot that was an actual feature of the game. One of the only good features of the game of this year, by the way, just to mention that one. But the race has been neutralized. The gaps are shrinking fast, of course. Many drivers actually taking a bit of a gamble. Look at that, Louis Welch going for a gamble on fresh full wets. Wilson Hall and Matex going for fresh inters. Might they have pulled off a smart move right there? Will they be able to catch back up to the safety car in time? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but it has to come in at the end of this lap because of the game code, hasn't it?
Mark Schlutter with a 3-second time penalty. He's not helping his day out.
No. This was their chance to catch up.
Neither is. If I was being completely honest, you might call me cynical for this, but both Ferraris. I'm not trying to be mean, but to some degree they'll be wondering why they turned up tonight. Really.
Yeah.
Because of course,
fair enough.
Neither of them have had the pace. Neither of them have even seen a shot of points. A safety car will be coming in.
Safety car in this lap. The field has, well, almost all of the field has been bunched up already. There's still some drivers just driving around a little bit lonely right there. One of them with Julian. Louis went to the fresh full wet right there. Will not have a chance to show off whether the strategy was right or not, because I don't think he's going to be able to catch up. He's already in turn 13 right now. They're 2 corners or 3 corners ahead at the moment. But Conrad will be getting underway as soon as he possibly can to try and extend that gap once again. But they have to be careful, won't they? Because they're in full wet conditions, more than full wet conditions, on intermediate tires. So caution is advised. Big time right now. The safety car is full on into the pit lane. The flags are going green right. Well, not yet. Right now, there they go, and off they go once again. Conrad got off to a really good start. Leroy Brown got off to a poor start, and Exafox is already alongside him in turn 1. Is he going to take the big risk on these slippery conditions? He's sort of trying to get himself wrestled past the Mercedes right there around the outside in turn 3. Where is he going to make the move stick? Not yet though, because Leroy Brown is pulling off a very strong defensive masterclass right there. Whoa, bits of front wing flying off already, with 2 laps remaining. Whose front wing was that? Was it Boba's? I can't figure it out just yet, but chaos is ensuing behind Leroy Brown right now, as Boba now managed to move into 4th. It's Exafox's front wing that has been damaged as he gets passed by cars left, right and center. It looks like a disaster there for the Alpine as he now gets ghosting already. He's slippery, slipping all over the place. It's absolute chaos as now Joe Hoppa is under threat from Lucas Beisner, and there goes other cars tumbling around. His front wings, a Haas front wing, they're flying off. Everybody tumbling out of top 10. Tom 97 finds himself in 12th already as Mark Schluter retires in the pit lane. What's going on over there all of a sudden?
I'm watching this and it is just madness. They don't know what they seem to all be doing.
It's a massacre, isn't it? I'm really surprised that they can't see each other because of all the spray.
Yeah, I don't think they really can, and especially going to places like the hairpin and any of the tight and tricky sections, they seem to be really struggling because a few times there, they've kind of gotten side by side without really knowing, without noticing until it's too late. So I think it's mostly because of the spray. But now, of course, Tom 97, best heel he might finish at the moment is just P10, which is a really big shame for him.
Yeah,
but we're on to the final lap now, and we've got to watch Conrad Bohm, because this is still a 3-way fight realistically. There's still 3 drivers who could win it if a mistake is made from any of them. So let's see how they go around the lap. We're coming around the final corner of Sector 1 as he hits the wall, Conrad Bohm does. Getting a little bit excitable, but of course only 3 sectors. He's only going to have 2/3 of the track left to conquer now. He's conquered the streets lap after lap in the dry. He's did it in the wet. Now he's got to do it just for one final time. But look at Lighty. Lighty is pushing. I think Lighty knows he can get those penalties removed. He is pushing for that win.
Otherwise he wouldn't push right now, yeah.
Yeah, he is pushing for that win. But remember, Conrad Bohm, he has the control. He's shown his control when battling. And let's see what he's going to be able to do here. Ooh, Lighty's not looking too good through the tight section. We've seen it all evening, haven't we? Lighty's really struggled through this section. And we're seeing it again. And you could just see that's where Conrad Bohm's going quite a bit faster, isn't he? Lighty's really struggling through there. And now coming down once again for the final time. Well, only one more straight to go. And just a short 4 corners left on this track. Now, Conrad Bohm makes his way down for the final time, down this back straight. He's got a lot of speed. He's got to push it all the way down here.
He's got it. He has to get it now.
Yeah, he has to. But, of course, there's still corners to negotiate, isn't there? Oh, Lighty's gone a little deep there. Lighty went a little bit deeper now. Coming round the final corner. Dominance has been one name, but he will crown himself. And that is Conrad Bohm, who wins in Singapore of PC Tier 3 in WOR. In season 19. What a win from the Red Bull.
For now, Leroy Brown has managed to come home 2nd place because Lighty has been demoted all the way down to P12, so I really hope he can get his penalty removed because that's a disaster for him right there. Exafox finishes in 3rd for the time being, Joe Hoppa in P4, Lucas Beister in P5, then Boba finishing in P6 there despite all the chaos. Exafox lucky then with his damaged front wing right there. Still manages to finish in 3rd place. Then Daniel Gottschalk, one of the Raymasters tonight, that's for sure. Alongside Conrad Bohm, finishes P7. He'll be delighted with that one. The rest of the results you'll get from me very, very soon indeed. But for now though, this rain has really heated up this race, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really did. And that safety car, of course, spiced it up even more.
Absolutely, yeah. Driver of the day, according to the game, Bogdan Moldovan, who finished, I believe, in P8. Out of what was very far down below. Look at that. From 16th to 8th. So well done to him. Of course, all these drivers who finished higher up because of Lighty's time penalty might get a 1 place lower. Indeed, Tom finished in 9th for now. Might be P10 then. Wilson Hall at the moment in the points in 10th place. Julian finished in 11th. Lighty for now in P12. Let's see what happens with his penalty. Jensen Rosen in P13. A bit of nowhere race for him. Same goes for Matex and Ivan Santamaria. Louis Welch in the end. Well, he didn't get it worked out, didn't he? Finished very far behind the pack as well, even allowing Ivan to get past. And then, of course, Tim's AI. I don't think he might not be classified whatsoever in 17th place. Mark Schluter retired in the pit lane, of course, in the final stages. Jacob Jesuit and Lewis Walker retired a lot earlier than that. And that's the results in for you right there.
Pretty interesting race to look back at. I think we'll all be looking back at that and saying it was incredibly useful and just crazy. But a lot of information gained from that race. Maybe Leroy Brown is not as strong as we thought he was.
Yeah, maybe it's a one-off. Maybe it's because, you know, it's Singapore. We do not know yet. Well, I think we'll need another race to evaluate the proper positions of people right now. For some reason, thing right now. Sorry about that. Trying to get the interview screen up right there. As I'm trying to tag the drivers for an interview as well. Let's hope they're up for it. In the interview waiting room. Conrad Bohm, Leroy Brown, and Xfox are the drivers I've decided to tag because we do not know whether Lighty's penalty is going to be removed or not. Feels like it is, otherwise he wouldn't have pushed that hard in the end. But we're going to drag somebody in already because it is the man who's won the race in quite a dominant fashion until the safety car hit. But even then, he stood his ground, won the race by quite the margin. Conrad, congratulations. You have a lot of happy people in the chat cheering for you right now. This was dominant from you. How do you feel about it yourself?
Yeah, it was so fun that way. Yes. No, I had the best pace and I was pulling up quite a lot on the, especially on the dries. But then, when it started rain, I still had, I think, the best pace. But Lighty, I don't think he was losing that much time, but anyway, that safety car, I don't know why did it
I believe it
out,
was
but...
because of the rain, the very heavy rain.
Okay, but still, I mean, I didn't want that safety car because I had 2 warnings, but anyway, I won, so I'm happy because of that.
Last week you finished 10th. This time you won the race. Maybe it's a bit early to say, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Championship hopes for you. Even if you're a reserve driver, it looks like you've got some serious pace. Last week in Texas, you got unlucky with an incident, but you had the pace. This week you had the pace as well. If you get to race every week, do you see yourself fighting for the championship?
Yeah, I think so. It will be quite good. But I need to race in... I mean, I have to be in every race to fight for the championship, but we'll see.
We'll see indeed. Epic, anything you'd like to ask?
No, how was it? So how was it in that last stint? You know, when, of course, the safety car came out. How did you feel when the safety car sort of came out? Was it sort of like, did you feel like your race might be over, or were you still confident that you could win?
No, I still was quite confident, but of course it would be better if the safety car didn't came out. But yeah, I'm happy. Anyway.
That's completely fair. I mean, you've drove brilliantly all race. You held your ground at the end of it, even with the safety car coming out and with the very tricky conditions. Because I believe I'm correct in saying that these were actually full wet conditions, weren't they?
Yeah, they were, but it would be complete nonsense if we hit on wets, because we would lose about 25 seconds or something like
exactly
something like that. Yeah, so.
I think that's the correct way of saying it. Anyway, enjoy your victory. Next week, we actually have, let me have a quick look, Las Vegas. If you're racing there, how do you think you will stand up on that track? Is it a strong track for you, or?
I like this quite. I like this track, but it will be so much DRS train, and it won't be like on Singapore where the pace will decide, but the strategy on the last lap.
All right. Thanks for joining us and enjoy your victory tonight.
Yeah, thank you. See you.
Cheers. Right, looks like Conrad, unfortunately, is the only driver to join us in the interview box. So we're going to have to leave it at that. It's a shame, but there's nothing we can do about it. But at least we've heard from the winner. He is a very happy man indeed. Yeah, a look at the calendar, Epic. Las Vegas, another street track right after Singapore next week. Will we see?
Interesting one.
It's another different type of track, isn't it, compared to the first two? It's just three very different tracks from one another, aren't they?
Yeah, it's not something we've seen in recent seasons, but I think in this case it could be good for Bone, but in many ways I think we'll see a different driver come out on top.
Okay.
And I'm actually I will say, I think Lighty might be a driver to really be strong. He didn't get the opportunity in Singapore, same as in Kota, but he seems really strong on form at the moment. From a normal track to a street track, he seems very great, very, very good, and very consistent.
Yeah, let's see how he's going to do next week in Vegas, followed then by Great Britain, the Netherlands, and Hungary before we go on our little Christmas holiday break, and returning in January with China, Canada, Austria, and finishing off the season in style in Brazil, Sao Paulo. Thank you so much for joining us once again tonight here in Tier 3. An epic race once again with the rain throwing out a lot of interesting things. The racing was a whole lot cleaner, I have to say, despite the narrowness of the track and the potential impatientness from the drivers trying to get past. They all held their ground. They all kept it quite clean and mostly, so well done to all of you. It looks like they've taken a leaf out of the book of some of those more patient drivers. So good on you. And let's hope this trend will continue to go upwards from this point on. Make sure to subscribe and leave a like on this stream and any of the other streams you can watch so far. Next week then, Las Vegas. Same place, same time as usual. Until then, goodbye.